What's up, Anchor Peeps? Anchor Pete here, and I'm with my beautiful wife, Shari T.
Hello.
And we are here for another installment of our January event, Snowbound. And Shari came up with the brilliant idea of tying in Snowbound with Stephen King, who I've had a recent obsession with recently.
It's not hard because he's got a couple Snowbound movies.
He
Or,
does.
I'm sorry, books.
Well, books and movies, right?
Adaptations, yes.
A lot
yeah,
of
yeah.
adaptations. And today we're going to be talking about The Shining. No. Today we're going to be talking about Dr. Sleep.
Is that all snowy? I haven't seen it or read it.
There's a snowy part. Today we're going to be talking about Misery.
Misery, yes.
Yes. And that's not just our life at home. It's also a movie starring Kathy Bates and James Caan. And so, Shari, this movie came out in 1990. Did you see it in the theater?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I don't remember. Did you?
I was 8 years old, so probably not.
Oh, yeah, you saw it for the first time last night sitting next to me.
That is true. But
Okay.
I will say that I've seen little bits and pieces of this movie. So today we are going to talk about it in detail. We're not going to summarize the whole plot, but if you've never seen Misery, the movie is 30 years old at this point, so just go watch it. It's on demand. And then come back and watch our review.
Yeah.
Okay, so Shari, Misery came out in 1990, and it's based on the Stephen King book that came out in 1987. And Stephen King himself has said that Misery is one of his top 10 favorite movie adaptations.
Wow, he's got that many that he can have a top 10?
Well, that's funny. Doing my research, I was like, it just says top 10 movie adaptations. So is it does he mean any book being adapted or
His own, I would assume.
his own?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's got that many.
He certainly does. I saw a post the other day that said that he has 13 miniseries. They're 13 Stephen King miniseries ranked, and that's just miniseries. And he has dozens of movies.
Wow.
Yeah. But here's one interesting fact about Misery. Misery is the only Stephen King movie to have won a Oscar. Kathy Bates for Best Actress. Okay, so for Misery, we have James Caan as the lead character, and the script for Misery was written by William Goldman. Mm-hmm. Now, we just lost William Goldman recently, but his death was a big impact on the screenwriting and novel writing community because he was a real big name. He wrote The Princess Bride, he wrote this, and a bunch of books and screenplays. What?
Do you know anything else he wrote?
I want to start with the fact that James Caan was not the first choice.
I'm not surprised.
William Hurt was offered the role of Paul Sheldon twice. He turned it down both times. And also, here's some other people that were offered the role. Kevin Kline, Michael Douglas, Harrison Ford, Robert Redford, Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, Richard Dreyfuss, Gene Hackman.
Okay, Richard Dreyfuss would have made it even more comedic than it is. Robert De Niro would have killed her. Kevin Kline. William Hurt probably would have been good. That's who they wanted both times?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can kind of see him. That might have been my favorite choice.
Could you picture Robert De Niro in the bed, looking at her oh. What are you doing? What are you doing with that sledgehammer? The difference there is that Kathy Bates was the choice right away. William Goldman actually suggested Kathy Bates to Rob Reiner.
I wonder why she had to be relatively unknown.
I don't know.
I think this is the movie that put her on the map.
Wherever William Goldman saw her, it really left an impact.
Yeah, I would like to know that.
Yeah, you guys probably know the plot of Misery, even if you haven't seen it. Writer Paul Sheldon, he's in Silver Springs, Colorado, and he's finishing up his latest book. He goes to drive home after completing his draft. He goes to drive back to New York.
First draft, right? And only copy.
Yes, that comes up later.
Yeah, it's important.
He goes to drive home, and he's driving in the middle of a blizzard. His car crashes. He's stranded there. He's badly injured, but luckily there's a savior that comes and gets him. This is Annie Wilkes. She brings him to her house where she lives in seclusion, and she nurses him back to health. And it turns out that Annie is Paul Sheldon's #1 fan. What are some things that you like about Misery? Why did you suggest Misery?
My favorite Stephen King adaptations are the ones that are based on realistic events, things that could actually happen in real life, and I think this is a really good example of that. when they go into the supernatural elements, I think people have a hard time adapting that and making it a clear and coherent story. I really like The Shining, but when it comes to the end of that movie and some of the supernatural goings-ons, I don't think it makes any sense. So I like that this kind of movie, along with Stand By Me and Shawshank, there's probably some more that I'm not thinking of, but they can be adapted and include all of the elements of Stephen King that he's so good at. Characters, writing great characters, and actually genuinely scary situation that could happen to anyone.
Yeah.
Well, not to anyone, but to a world famous writer who gets in a car wreck.
Yeah.
Anyone could be abducted, though.
Yeah.
Anyone could be abducted and held against their will, which is pretty much what happens here.
Yeah, you brought up that point last night when we were watching it too. It's funny because on my other channel, the Lastercast, we've been talking about Stephen King nonstop, and we've been covering The Stand too, the new miniseries. And on that channel, I'm pretty sure we had this discussion where it was recorded, but Chris and Danny were basically saying that for the people that adapt Stephen King movies, there's Rob Reiner, right? There's Frank Darabont, and then there is Mike Flanagan. And they're like the main guys that know how to adapt Stephen King stories, right? And Darabont did, The Mist, and he did Shawshank, right? But
Did he do The Green Mile?
I believe so.
Because that's
yes.
another realistic
Yes.
one that's very good movie.
Well, the Green Mile's not as realistic, right? Because it has supernatural.
I forgot. Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit. It's mostly realistic, though.
Yeah.
And it's really good, though.
That has your favorite actor in it too, Sam Rockwell.
Yeah, I know.
So anyway, but here's the thing. You said last night that
It's okay with me he's in it, though, because he's the bad guy.
yeah.
To me, that's appropriate. I don't like that actor.
So you said that Rob Reiner is good for adapting Stephen King realistic stories, and I totally agree. Covering Stand By Me, and then of course this movie as well. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a really good point. For a movie that is directed by a guy that doesn't necessarily do supernatural stuff, and it's a Stephen King story that's not very supernatural, I do have to say that there are some parts that are very stylized, right?
Okay, go on.
Well, so Annie Wilkes, as you learn pretty quickly, is kind of unstable, right? And
Kinda.
I think some of the most memorable scenes, and I think when people parody this movie, they show these scenes where she kind of starts to kind of break down, and the camera is almost like a fisheye lens view of her, where it gets like right in her face. And that doesn't really remind me of Rob Reiner. It kind of reminds me more of like Sam Raimi, right? And I liked it because it makes the scene so much more intense. And one thing that's great about Kathy Bates' performance and this character in general is that she's very kind of pleasant and ho-hum, and she just seems like a woman that would get lost in the crowd. But then when she gets upset, there's a tight focus on her face, and it's just pretty intense.
And she starts spouting like non-cuss words.
Non-cuss words, yes.
She doesn't allow herself to cuss. She actually does say cocksucker at one point.
At the very end.
At the very end when she really loses her shit.
Yes, yes.
But mostly it's like cockadoodie and...
Cockadoodie, yeah.
Some made up like words, which is part of the humor. This movie is actually... while there are frightening parts, it's actually kind of funny. There's several, just as many comedic moments as there are scary ones, I think.
Oh yeah. We're talking about Kathy Bates' performance and how great it is, but you know what? I think that James Caan is pretty excellent in this role too. You don't disagree?
I kind of disagree.
Really?
Yeah.
See,
maybe again an unpopular opinion. I do think she's wonderful, and I think. I'm so happy they found her and cast her, and especially since she was like kind of this unknown. Like, she's perfect. She's so weird and creepy and crazy, and there's a part where he calls her a crazy bitch, and it's just like, I can't think of someone who's embodied that, who deserves being called a crazy bitch as much as Annie Wilkes. I love James Caan as Sonny in the Godfather franchise, but here I just thought he didn't emote enough.
Yeah, but okay, so see, that's what I like. Right? Because I know James Caan basically from The Godfather, like you said, and then from this TV show Las Vegas, where he's just kind of this too cool for school guy, right? Mm-hmm. I haven't really seen him in much else besides maybe Elf. But what's really
where he's too cool for school also, right? He's this like father who can't show love.
Right. But see, that's what makes the scenes with him and Kathy Bates so great, because she's just so like, and he has these reactions to her where, his eyes just kind of get bigger, like, okay, you're nuts.
See, you think he's like portraying enough with his eyes? I don't think it's enough. I think I need someone who can give me these little subtle clues and hints more than he does. And he has a number of scenes where he is alone, trying to like get out of bed, trying to like get through the house, and I just don't feel his desperation enough.
Really?
Yeah, I've seen this a couple of times, but I haven't seen it in probably 10, 15 years until we watched it last night. And I didn't think this before, but I thought it this time. I felt underwhelmed by his performance.
Wow, that is interesting that you say that, because like, so okay, just if you haven't seen the movie, his legs are really messed up, right? And
yeah, they're broken in numerous places.
Anytime someone like, which Kathy Bates like throws something on his legs at one point, he like falls on the ground. You can like feel the pain, right? I mean, Kathy Bates says a line in the beginning of the movie, which is like, "I could hear your bones moving around." And that's definitely like straight out of a Stephen King book, that line of dialogue.
Gross.
And so his legs just look so gross, and I just felt his pain. There's a couple of times when he was like struggling to get up off the ground, and you looked at his face, and he was like purple looking, and just his facial reaction, like I don't know. I felt his pain. I was there.
I know. I mean, I'm not saying he was bad, but I see why they asked a bunch of other people before him, kind of. Yeah, I just think maybe someone else could have done a better job. To be fair, his performance is almost all reaction to her.
Yes.
You know, he's not the one who gets the kind of showy part.
Yes.
But sometimes to me the less showy part is where you get to do more, because you have to like actually act even harder because you don't have as many lines, you don't have as much stuff to do, and I don't know. I thought he was okay. There's a reason he's not the one nominated for all the awards and she was. So.
Yeah, well, it's funny because James Caan said that one of the things he really enjoyed about that role was that he got to play a reactive character. Like a character reacting to things.
Okay.
Yeah. So, Shari, like I said, this movie came out when I was 8 years old, right? And my Aunt Margaret, who watches these videos, hi, Aunt Margaret, she
does?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, I didn't know that. Hi, Aunt Margaret.
Yeah, she's a huge Stephen King fan. She used to be a member of the book club, and she used to give me the Stephen King desktop calendar, which for the thousands and thousands of people that watch this video, if you guys ever want to start making those again, they were fantastic.
The thousands and thousands.
Yes.
The masses.
Yes. But anyway, Margaret felt this like buzz for the movie. I know she was really into Kathy Bates, and I remember when I was a kid, it was kind of a sensational movie. It really kind of stood out. It was one of those movies that people talked about a lot, right?
Yeah.
Now, why do you think that this movie had such an impact when it came out?
I don't know. I mean, the hobbling scene is astounding.
Yeah.
I mean, is that the first time you've seen that scene?
No.
You had seen it like it was given away for you?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that like on some sort of horror tribute documentary or something they showed that scene.
Did you feel it had more gravity knowing what all led up to it though?
I felt more for the character. You know, to me, when I just saw it out of context, I was like, oh, it's James Caan. His foot's getting bent the wrong way. But, I felt...
You know, and from what I understand in the book, she cuts his foot off, actually.
With the axe. Yes, that's correct. William Goldman actually fought to keep that in the movie, but they actually wanted to make Annie Wilkes more relatable. And so they thought that if she cut off his foot with the axe...
That's a little too much.
Yeah.
Actually, I think they did the right thing, because that hobbling scene is horrible in, like, all the right ways for a horror movie, in my opinion. I can't even look at it, because they show the foot.
Yes,
I think it's really good. And they don't really have much leading up to it. You know that she's steadily showing her crazy more and more to him. But he, like, wakes up in that scene. I think she had drugged him right before that. He wakes up, and she's standing there, and she hobbles him within, like, a minute. She gives him kind of this short, like, speech, and it happens pretty fast. And I also thought this movie was slower than I remembered.
Oh, okay.
And maybe it needs to be. I mean, it mostly focuses on only two characters throughout the whole movie. And it takes kind of some time to build up to her, to us seeing what she really can do. I mean, you get, like, the glimpses, and she gets progressively worse and worse. I don't know. It's just, like, moved a little bit slower than I remembered.
I think the reason why that book was a hit and the reason why the movie was a hit was because you have a man completely powerless and you have this female villain. And I think that there's something in that excites people, that it's like, oh, this is cool, that it's like this man who's just helpless and he's this woman's prisoner. I think that's why there was this buzz, right?
Why? Because of the flip-flop situation where
Yeah,
usually the women
yeah,
are the
right,
mercy
right.
men. That is a nice
Right,
change.
right,
I mean,
exactly.
I'm not saying this isn't a good movie. I just noticed more, like I said, flaws this time.
Yeah, and there's one scene in particular that really bothered me, like as a writer, which is that scene where she's read his draft of his new book that's not in the Misery series, and she doesn't like it at all. She brings in a hibachi and basically fills it up with lighter fluid and says, "Okay, you're gonna have to torch your only draft of your book." And boy, that scene that really bothered me. I was like, "Oh man, that's rough. You just spent all this time working on this. It's agony just to make a book, and he has to just burn it all away."
I think that might be where they're playing the kind of like romantic swelling music. But like to me, that scene, that's exactly the scene where I felt like he should have emoted more.
Yeah.
That's where I noticed it. I think the main scene where I noticed it, because I was kind of like, I know we're all feeling it, but I'm almost having to imagine what that feels like more than seeing it through his eyes, because he's upset, but it's not enough, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree.
And this is a scene where he doesn't even have to hide his emotions from her. He can show her he's upset because she knows he's upset, and he still doesn't show enough, in my opinion.
Yeah. I thought that, like, maybe a tear would run down his cheek, or he, like, would say, "You fuck," or, like, he'd get real mad. Or he, in the end of the movie, he gets his revenge, and he, like, curses her out about it. You see his, like, rage over it. So, besides that, I think that Annie Wilkes is probably one of Stephen King's best characters. Like, she's just so quirky. Stephen King, when you read his books, a lot of his villains that are like the demonic evil things are very like clever and elegant, right? And then there's just sort of like people that are like country bumpkins or just everyday normal people, and they're quirky and they say little quirky things. But so Annie Wilkes, I feel like, is different from a lot of the villains that I've read recently, where she is that kind of country woman that she's almost like a yokel, she's small town, and she's just so excited to be talking to this author. And she's sitting there eating like Cheetos and watching Love Connection, right, late at night. But yet she is the evil. She's the Pennywise or the Overlook Hotel or the Randall Flagg.
That's why it's realistic. That's more what a realistic evil person would maybe embody.
Yeah.
They're not going to be a demon or something. This is the real life demon.
I think that, like what you said before about how this could really take place, like this could be a true story. I think that's what makes her more scary, and I think that probably made the movie more intense for people, thinking like, "Oh, this could happen to me."
Yeah, and you know what else is really great about her character and her performance? Like, you kind of know people like that. Mm-hmm. Not just like her necessarily, but people with, faucets of her personality.
Yeah.
I mean, I even felt like I have some faucets of her personality.
Yeah.
She had a pet pig. We have pet rats in our house. I mean, people would be horrified. Probably James Caan would be horrified by our rats if they came up to him. But I'm like, look at my cute little rat, like she is with her pig named Misery, by the way.
Yeah.
That cracks me up. You kind of like you hate Kathy Bates by the end. But at the same time, I do think she's kind of relatable, her character. I do sort of like enjoy her more than I normally would any villain. I like her a little bit.
I could relate to Annie Wilkes in the way that she's like obsessed with a writer. I'm not as crazy as her, but I definitely get super excited if like a writer that I know will like respond to a tweet or something, or even like send me a message or something like that. That's real exciting to me. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't like kidnap them and hobble them, but
yeah, well, there was no one to hold Annie accountable. She's living a solo life, and I think that's an interesting thing too. There's a thing going on in this movie with isolation and claustrophobia, how he never gets to really leave the house. This could be a play easily, I think. It's pretty much set in the one location, her farmhouse, and I think that's kind of scary and creepy too, and loneliness, and especially during this pandemic, I think people are feeling that more than ever, and maybe people who have never really felt that are getting a dose of that right now.
I bet you $50 there has been a Misery play before. I bet you there
should be. It'd be not that hard to do.
Yeah. So then one other thing, when we were watching it, you mentioned how it reminded you of the nurse in Fargo too, and spoilers for the last season of Fargo.
Season 4.
Mm-hmm. There's a nurse character in it, and here's the spoiler: is that she's one of those nurses that will like kill patients, and that's the kind of the backstory that we learn about Annie Wilkes, is that she kind of murdered a couple of patients, and that's very scary in itself too.
Yeah, and from what I understand, Noah Hawley was asked about that character. He's the showrunner for Fargo. He was asked about his nurse character and how similar she was to Annie Wilkes, and not just the plot, the way she acts. Do you remember when we were watching it and I said, she reminds me of Annie Wilkes? And you said the Wicked Witch of the West, and it's like she was a meld of them.
Yes.
Well, he was asked if Annie Wilkes inspired that character, and he denied it. But I watched Misery last night, and I'm like, how could it not? Mm-hmm. She actually is a nurse who gets, looks like she can't be a nurse anymore. She gets kicked out of the nursing field because she killed patients.
Yeah.
Although in this case, it looks like infants.
Yeah.
Which is...
Yeah, that's horrible in itself.
That doesn't play into the movie at all.
No.
There's no talk about children or babies or anything. So I thought that was kind of a weird detail. Do you know if it's like that in the book?
I'm sure it is. That sounds like straight up Stephen King.
I wonder why she would do that or what her issue is.
What I could glean from that was like that she like when she loves something, she's like really into it to where she would kind of hurt it to keep it, right? Because essentially when she is thinking about killing James Caan and killing herself, it's when she realizes he's eventually going to try to leave her. And so with the baby, if you're in the, the ward with the infants, they're going to eventually leave. So
that's horrible.
Yeah, it is pretty horrible. Let's not end the show on that note. We can talk about Noah Hawley for a second, because speaking of Noah Hawley, we could tie it all together. He's a writer that we met in person one time.
Yeah.
And I think maybe we acted like a little bit like Annie Wilkes, probably. We were kind of excited to meet him.
He wasn't excited to meet us.
No, he was not excited to meet us. No. He seemed kind of annoyed.
He was exasperated, and I think he wanted to go home and have his dinner, and we were holding him up. That was my vibe.
Yes. Shari, I am really grateful that you had us watch Misery. I think that's a good choice for Snowbound, and anytime we can talk about Stephen King makes me happy.
Okay, I'd love to watch more of the adaptations with you. I do think with Carrie and Misery, we've covered some of the better ones. Mm-hmm. There's more, though.
I agree. And speaking of Noah Hawley, he has written Fargo, the show, which we love. And we are actually going to be reviewing Fargo, the movie that was made by the Caan brothers. So that's going to be our next Snowbound episode.
Can't get more Snowbound than Fargo.
That's right. Okay. So until then, we will see you guys real soon.